Congresswoman Emily Randall, thank you so much for being on Building the Bench today. I'm appreciate you making the time, and I'm excited to hop into it with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We have an obvious guest with us here today,
yes.
and I was going to ask about him or her.
Him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I figured.
I mean, I don't know that he ascribes to like gender norms.
You're
but...
right. He could be anything he wants.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being here. We're going to hop right into this, actually. First, though, your dog's name is Bad Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the name come from? I'm assuming you're a fan.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm definitely a fan. Yep. But also, I have 2 other dogs.
Okay.
All my dogs are named after like Latinx artists.
Okay.
So I have a Frida, a 10-year-old pit bull.
Love.
I have a Ricky Martina, a 5-year-old pit husky mix, who looks more like a German shepherd. And then this one was my grandparents, and then my cousins, and during new member orientation, my cousin called me and said, I can't find dog-friendly housing. Can you take the dog?
Wow, so this is like a recent
change. He
change.
came to live with me in December, and I just like bought a air travel carrier case, and here we are.
Did you two like know each other? Had you spent time together
yes,
before, so it was an easy
my wife
transition?
and I actually adopted him for my grandparents because they needed a companion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be fun. I mean, is Bad Bunny a little bit of an emotional support animal for the caucus right now?
I mean, the caucus loves him. He comes to caucus meetings.
Okay.
Sometimes he even comes to the oversight committee. Patty Murray really likes to see him on the plane.
I love it.
Even Republicans, like, he's charming. He has a funny face. They like to ask about him.
He's cute. He's compact. He can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think in this moment in time, maybe dogs can bridge the great divide between Republicans and Democrats. So
I mean, there's nothing cuter than a dog in an LL Bean tote bag.
100%. So I love that. So I actually have a little bit of a Washington State connection. My mom is from the Tri-Cities, born and raised in Pasco. Very different than your district. I'm kind of the opposite end of the state, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I every once in a while we'll get to Washington, and sometimes people are like, oh, like Pacific Northwest. I'm like, the Washington State I'm going to is very different than what people envision for the Pacific Northwest. But at some point, I'll get to spend a little time in Seattle and Puget Sound and all of that.
Well, you know, we have a 6-district Tri-Cities connection.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, one, my legislative director is from the Tri-Cities, but also the Pacific Northwest National Labs are in the Tri-Cities.
Yes.
And in SQUIM.
Okay.
So they do like their oceanography research, air and water quality research, research with NOAA at the SQUIM site.
I have an uncle who works in that kind of general industry, so I know there's a lot of jobs that come from that, all of that. So okay, good. So kindred spirits from a state location standpoint. I know you mentioned your wife. I know you've been together for quite a long time, right?
20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's got nothing on me. That's good.
I mean, we were babies. We were literal babies.
Okay. So but for the two of you, are there any sort of like time-tested traditions and habits that have like really lasted the years for the two of you?
I mean, we moved every year for a long time, but hopefully, not moving much more now. Alice and I love to take our dogs like out in nature. When we lived in San Francisco and we just had the one dog, we did what we called urban hiking. But now, living in the Pacific Northwest, you have beautiful places to go on a hike or walk. Like just outside the door. We live, a mile from the Puget Sound. We live close to Scenic Beach State Park where we got married. There's the Olympics. There's wooded trails everywhere, or beach or lakes. We've taught the dogs to paddleboard and kayak too. So
are they standing on like the front of it then and just enjoying it?
Yes.
Okay.
Frida's a really good kayaker. Ricky like always wants to be next to Frida, so she'll try to board somebody else's paddleboard to do that.
So I would love to take it back a little bit, talk a little bit about just your roots and your upbringing, all of that. I know you came from, working class family, union household. How did that what from your childhood in that period of time has really like stuck with you through the years?
So let's see. I never thought that I was like going to be an elected official as a young person, but I did know that I wanted like do good for the world kind of job.
Yeah.
There were a lot of, as Mr. Rogers calls them, helpers in my life. Like my dad, grandpa, uncles, all served in the military. Both of my grandfathers and my dad and my uncle worked at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard as civilians for the Department of Defense, big employer in our district. Another grandpa was a firefighter. One of my grandmas worked in hospital housekeeping. My mom was on our preschool board. There are people in my community who I saw doing good for other people because it was the right thing to do. And I had a sister who was born when I was 7 who had really significant disabilities. And so I spent a lot of my young life both taking care of Olivia and seeing the challenges she and my family faced in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that experience really, really motivated me to think about how I could remove some of those barriers for people. And for the first decade of my career, it was raising money for healthcare and education organizations. And then I got to a point after the 2016 election when I realized I couldn't raise enough money on the outside to save people from losing healthcare. So I might as well try to make policy.
And I know you've talked about that before, about how important your sister's journey and use of Medicaid was to your family as you were growing up and as she was growing up. And so I'm sure in this moment of time too, you're deeply frustrated in what is coming from at least from a Medicaid standpoint. Is it, did you ever feel your telling her story and talking to colleagues about it, or Republican colleagues, did you ever feel like it was getting through and resonating to them?
I mean, here, I don't know that I've seen it make that difference. In Olympia, when I was in the state's legislature and we were looking at Medicaid expansions and rule changes for serving people with disabilities, I was able to find a lot of bipartisan areas of support, often with Republicans who also had family members with disabilities. But everybody's experience is so different. So when we would tell our stories or our family stories, there would be that, oh, aha, interesting moment. This waiver, met access was different for you, or this is the way you were challenged finding a caregiver. And I'm hopeful that we'll get to a place where we're actually listening to each other and not just waiting to respond.
So I think that's what's interesting to me too, is I'm some of the Republican members of Congress also have to have their own personal stories with their family or people they're close to relying on some of these social safety net programs. And so I think it was just an interesting thing of what's happened the past several months. Yeah. I'm it's interesting that some of those personal pleas that I'm certain some of those people got also didn't seem to ring through.
Well, we've seen Josh Hawley decide that he is
talk about it, but not actually vote about it. Yeah, no.
Talk about it, not vote for it, but then introduce a bill to nullify his vote by.
Well, and I what is so interesting about all of it too, it's so much of that is couched in, well, there's all the fraud, waste, and abuse in the system, and it's the actual numbers for fraud within Medicaid are
so low,
minuscule,
so low.
And so I think it's interesting to see who the scapegoat ends up being versus the fact it's a lot of I worked in healthcare for a while, and it's so much of the spending bloat is just the spending bloat within the system. It's not, it has nothing to do with the patients and them committing fraud. It has to do with the system that just inherently keeps getting more expensive because there are layers of fat and all of that. And it's so I hope you're able to continue at least telling the story about it, and maybe it'll move the needle at some point. So for you, and you talked about in 2016, you felt like that was the sea change for you, where you felt like becoming an elected official was how you could start affecting kind of greater change. But I'm curious, even before that, when did you feel yourself starting to get politically engaged? Was there a political event or a political memory for you where you were okay, this is something I'm going to start caring about?
Yeah. I guess the first election I remember is Clinton in 92. And I remember it because my elementary school principal and teachers had this great idea that they were going to do a school-wide election. So some sixth graders dressed up as the presidential candidates. Every classroom voted. It's a very formative memory for me.
Yeah.
And I thought about that a lot. Like, how lucky was I to have like educators who wanted us to understand democracy? I don't think like, I was still 6.
But I think that's actually a cool part about it. It's like it's something that you still clearly remember, even though theoretically there's so much other things or so many other things you're not remembering from that time.
Yeah, and like I didn't have all the language to describe what it meant to me or to even know what it meant. But like that was really formative. And I did this petition for another tetherball pole in elementary school because the girls would stand and wait in line to play tetherball while the boys were playing dodgeball or softball. Yeah. And not all boys and all girls, but, by and large.
And I think that's some of the stuff I feel like growing up for me. I don't have a ton of memories of my school getting people politically engaged. Even in like a nonpartisan, I think even that stuff of like giving young kids like tasks and having to collect signatures and do all stuff. I think for me, mine ended up sort of being 2008 Obama. Like I'm from the Chicago area. I was in Grant Park in 2008 and like just that feeling of when it happened and being in the city and everybody's laying on their horns and you're in Grant Park and he gave the big yes we can speech and for me like something clicked and from then on it was like, and I by the time 2012 rolled around when I could actually vote, it was like this thing where I was so in it at that point. And so like I remember that, but I also look back and think I wish I had a little more of what you're talking about too, which is, a little more civic education, I guess.
Yeah, I do. Like, I was lucky. Yeah. I had amazing educators. I followed like that 2008 election really closely in 2004. Those were like my college years and the year I graduated. But it was 2012. I was living in Boston, freshly graduated, excited to reelect Obama in a state that had once had Mitt Romney as their governor. But also on the ballot in Washington state was marriage equality, referendum 74.
Okay.
And that was like a year where Facebook had this plugin that you could see which of your friends had mailed in their ballots. And so I was like on the elliptical, right, East Coast time, like looking at Facebook and messaging friends in Washington who hadn't voted yet. And like,
I love it.
They're like, oh, I don't care about the president. And I had this one real big debate with a friend who didn't care about who was going to be president. It wasn't going to elect it or like change his life. But I said, would you want to vote so that I could get married? And we went back and forth and he did vote then.
I love it.
And then he ended up years later running for fire commissioner.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you might have had a hand in his first little bit of civic engagement. I mean, I think I love that story. I think sometimes people forget that sometimes the biggest impact you can have is knowing where your friends are and texting them to make sure, even if sometimes it is trying to convince them to think about their vote, maybe change their vote, but even just do it in the first place. And I think even if people just established a habit of like text 10 friends to make sure that they voted in whatever election it is can make a huge difference.
That peer-to-peer engagement is huge.
Yes. Yeah. So you talked about running for the state senate. I know your the first primary you ran in, or the first, actually, I think maybe there's the first like general. You won by like 104 votes.
102,
102,
104 pre-recount, 102 post-recount.
Okay, minuscule. Yeah. When you look back from that time and that campaign, what in your head do you look at and think like, this is the thing we did that made the 102 vote difference?
I mean, definitely talking to voters. We knocked on more doors than anybody else in the race and got volunteers to talk to their friends, did peer-to-peer outreach. I mean, I think part of why people in my community who I talk to like don't feel invested in politics or feel mistrustful of politics is because they don't see politicians or elected officials showing up for them.
Yeah.
They don't think elected people care about what regular people care about. And like, I get it, when you're only getting ads on TV or in your mailbox, like that doesn't feel personal.
Yeah.
And so I would like go and knock on people's doors and my volunteers would do the same. And I would say like, I'm running for office, but I want to know what keeps you up at night. Like, what are the things that you want to see change in our community and what are you hoping for? And even when folks would say like, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm never going to vote for you, I would say, but I still want to know, because if I win, like I want to at least know what you want me to be fighting for.
About. Yeah. I mean, I think right now too, in this like, soul searching moment for Democrats, there is this question of, well, like it's media and online, we've got to do all that stuff. And it's like, it sort of has to be a yes and of what you're talking about and the other stuff as well. Because like you said, it's political ads and videos online can only do so much. And sometimes the face-to-face thing, I even talk about people like doing this, like being face-to-face with you versus over Zoom. To me, sometimes those conversations are the things that actually make the difference and change someone who says, I'm a Republican voter, I'm never going to vote for you, to go, actually, no, I sat down and talked to her and it turns out we agree on a majority of stuff. And I don't agree with her on everything, but I agree with her on enough to vote for her. When you were in the state Senate, you passed, quite a bit of legislation. There's a toll reduction bill, healthcare bills. What did some of those early legislative successes teach you about strategy, political strategy and legislating strategy?
Yeah. I think one of the first bills that really, really taught me a lesson was this bill I worked on to create like a universal healthcare working group. I had seen Medicaid expansion change my family's life. I wanted to work towards a place where everyone had healthcare that they could rely on. And, we didn't have the votes in our caucus for sort of a statewide Medicare for all or like the universal healthcare bill that some advocates were fighting for. But I thought we could get much closer if we like brought people together.
Yeah.
So we had this bill and it passed the Senate. It was like a landmark bill for us. We call it our 5 o'clock bill on, the last day, House of Origin cutoff. And then it died in the House. And what I learned is that just because your bill dies, at least at the state legislative level, like that doesn't mean that you can't find a way to stick it in something else. And so we got budget language in to authorize the working group and to keep the policy moving forward. And, I was able to do that because I had colleagues who helped me figure it out, and there was amazing staff. And so I really learned that, one, you have to build the broad support to get your policy passed. I had it in the Senate, but I didn't have it in the House. But there are also like creative ways to solve the problems that might not be your name at the top of a piece of legislation, but are still impactful.
How do you balance that urgency and patience when it comes to passing priorities of yours, especially when maybe your time is limited? And so what do you try to do to set things up so maybe somebody can pick up where you left off?
Yeah.
Are there like people you serve with that you leave it with? Like,
So I did that in the legislature, and Congressman Kilmer did that for me when I came into the Senate. Here they call it like putting a pin in a bill, like passing it off to someone. And we've picked up and reintroduced a number of Congressman Kilmer's bills. And in the legislature, I also passed off some policy to folks who had been co-sponsors or, had the partner legislation in the House. Some people feel like, I'm not going to share all my notes with another member because I don't know the reason. But we were like very transparent, and my former legislative assistant briefly served as the legislative assistant for the person who was appointed behind me and like gave them everything.
Yeah.
And I think, especially when you're in the same caucus on the same team, like siloing information and trying to like hoard it for ego doesn't serve anyone.
Yep.
Like, let's make sure we get the good bills passed.
Or like you said, then you have priorities that end up just kind of, they die when you leave an institution, and then it was a lot of work that went nowhere.
Yeah.
Interesting. You serve in a blue seat, and I guess a relatively safe blue seat. Does being in a relatively safe blue seat feel like it gives you a little political leeway, or does it actually feel like it comes with pressures of people are in this district, it's a relatively safe blue district, and it comes with these expectations of what I'm going to support and what I'm going to vote for?
I think both. Especially coming from like a very purple seat into this blue seat, like I do have more, I guess, broader support behind some of the policies that I've worked on before even. I never really shied away from issues that were super important to me and I saw as important to my neighbors, even if they might be branded as progressive. But now, of course I'm going to sponsor universal healthcare policy or Medicare for all. Of course I'm going to like be a bold champion for the environment because like we have one of the most beautiful environments there is in the country. And I have so many constituents who fervently care about preserving our planet for generations to come. At the same time, I think there are expectations that folks have about their elected officials, particularly when they agree on some things or when they share some kinds of identity. And I mean, I think it's kind of shorthand, like, oh, this person agrees with me on this. We must agree on
on
XYZ thing.
everything
Yeah.
sometimes. And that's where it can
It's
become
definitely
difficult.
challenging. And like, I have this hip asymmetrical queer haircut.
Which I love,
right?
by the way.
Thank you. But like, I have always seen myself as like a bridge builder. It's not just because I served in a purple district, but it's because I grew up in a bipartisan home, and I like am a queer Latina who grew up in a predominantly white community, and my family was like working class. When my parents got divorced, my mom really struggled to reenter the workforce, and then I went to this college on incredibly generous financial aid where like I served alongside people who flew to campus in a private jet. You know, bridging like divides and differences of background has always come really naturally to me and is where I'm comfortable and where I think we are able to like accomplish a lot.
Can I jump in quick and ask what for you, like, what is a memory of, and you don't have to name names or anything, but with a person, it could be, you know, it could be outside of political life or in political life where you just figured there is no way I'm going to agree with this person on anything. And you ended up actually finding common ground with them to accomplish something.
The reverse, or like something that happened to me. I remember when I was first elected to the state Senate, it had been, you know, a tight campaign, lots of independent money spent, lots of Republican mailers saying I was a socialist or whatever lazy attack they had. And I was standing up against a wall on the Senate floor, and this other senator, a Republican senator, came up and stood next to me. Well, a Democratic senator who caucused with the Republicans, but that gives it away. And said, you know, you're not as, I don't know if it was radical or scary or some word as they said you were. And I mean, it just made me like chuckle, but also became the beginning of a really great friendship.
Great.
And, you know, like the current Senate minority leader in Washington State, John Braun, when I first got elected, he wasn't the minority leader, but we both cared a lot about the wait list, no paid services caseload for people with disabilities getting covered for services. You know, John and I would always agree on that policy, and we would always find ways to work together. And there were lots of other things that we disagreed on, but like that was a place where we both could find common ground. And I just feel like I'm so wistful for those. I know
it sounds like you were able to find that in state politics. What has stood out to you both like culturally or structurally since leaving state politics and coming to Congress?
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the things is there's not like a member dining room where everyone goes and eats lunch. And I think there used to be. I heard President Biden, before he left office in January, spoke to new members about like that Senate dining room that was really important for him. I guess the elevators have become those places for us because
those rides are too short, right?
I know. In Oversight Committee, we had a briefing yesterday, and it was just like 3 of us at first. And I went and sat next to one of the Republicans because I was like, what, am I allowed to sit here? Like, it feels weird to be on the opposite side of the room as you. I think there are a few places for us to socialize as humans, like connect personally without C-SPAN, right? Without the pressure of
the theater of a committee hearing.
Yes. I also, we had a bill that was like word for word the language of a Republican member's amendment in a previous Congress to add inspectors general to the Office of Management and Budget. And so my staff called this member and said, would you co-sponsor this? Like, this was your amendment language before. And they're like, got a little chuckle and, you know, maybe in a different Congress, or maybe in a few months from
Interesting.
now, or
Huh.
it just like wasn't the time for them to be bipartisan. And I just keep looking. I hold on to
That
hope.
must make you want to bang your head against a wall,
Yeah.
though, because it's just like, those are your words.
Right.
What do you mean you don't
Right.
stand by them anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, I heard you talk about recently calling out a Republican member on the steps of the Capitol who you thought was spreading misinformation about Medicaid. And do you feel like there's enough of that happening right now of I think sometimes I have this question of like, should some Democratic members just go out and like call out a piece of misinformation every day from their colleagues in order to call out and say, hey, this is a thing this is what's true, this is what's not true. And I'm just curious what your experience is, what your experience was with that, and why you think it's important.
I mean, obviously, like, honestly, I go back and forth about this.
Yeah.
Like, I think for our community and for like neighbors and voters, knowing the truth is so important for them making decisions about who they're going to vote for and who they put their support behind. But in my town halls, I've often, I get a lot of like requests for me to be more aggressive, do more, like push back on these Republicans, tell them what is a lie. And like, I understand the fervor there. And I always say, like, who's married here? Like, when you call out your spouse for doing something wrong, are they likely to change their mind? Like, do they like it when you say, you're wrong about this? And not that I want like my colleagues to like everything I say, but I think there's space for us to be like holding people accountable in the public square. And there has to be space for us to try and pull some votes on important policy, like John McCain did, to save the ACA.
I talked about this actually recently when I was talking to Sarah Elfreth. I basically asked her something similar where she was talking about trying to humanize the cuts, the SNAP cuts and the Medicaid cuts, everything that's about to come. Yeah. And I was like, does that work anymore with the other side where it feels like that type of humanizing of all of that in 2017 was sort of what ended up saving the ACA. And I think despite that attempt to do all of that, especially to people who are in districts that have 60, 65, 70% Medicaid adoption amongst their constituents, that still somehow wasn't able to move the needle enough. You've only been in Congress for several months now. It's your first term. What is like an unwritten piece of Hill etiquette that you didn't know about and you got there and you're like, oh God, like why didn't anybody tell me about this?
Oh my gosh. How long do you have?
you can rattle off like 2 or 3 if you want to.
My chief is sitting over here out of frame. Yeah. And we have this little running joke about the number of times a day that I will shock her. Because like I am a person that only likes to follow rules that I believe in or like that are aligned with my values. I mean, the law is a different thing, right? Is it legal or illegal? But is it a like expectation or a rule? I'm not one to like care about it unless like I understand the why of it. Yeah. And there's a lot of like sort of expectations and behind the scenes about how you get on committees and what like machinations of Hill life. But
I guess are there any of those that you're like, we need to break this one or leave it in the past?
Yeah. I mean, I've been really excited by our leadership's interest in like supporting folks with strong ideas and leadership skills. Like we saw our caucus overwhelmingly elect Robert Garcia to chair the Oversight Committee. Yeah. And that was super exciting. Yesterday, as a member of CPC, we announced that myself, freshman Yasemin Ansari and freshman Dave Min were appointed to chair these new Progressive Caucus task forces. I'm chairing the one on better pay and benefits. And I mean, so
you feel like
there's opportunity
is starting to heed those suggestions of open the door for people, even if they aren't in their 10th term.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really feel like there's a place for all generations of leadership.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that our country is better when we have all sorts of like perspectives creating our policy. I believe that our caucus works better when we have folks who, you know, have served for a long time and understand how things have changed and what might not have worked 15 years ago, but what we might try now. I generally like believe that there are so many ideas from every corner, and that like the job is important, but each of us as an individual is not like, I don't know, super special, right? We just have really important jobs, and figuring out how we as a team can be most effective for the American people is the most important work.
I think that's a good outlook to have on it too, honestly. Pivoting to a little bit more to, I guess we're kind of on the topic already, but talking about the party in the future and where things are going. I mean, obviously there have been 1,000,002 op-eds about the Democratic Party and identity politics and leaning in too much into it, all of that. I don't know if I fully buy into it, and I think sometimes it's written about more than was actually the case. But I guess my question for you is, how do you think Democrats should talk about identity without losing people in the process?
I mean, I think we should talk about people, not like
the label.
Yeah. Like, we don't come in like clean categories. We are people who are complex. I mean, the data shows us that like queer youth are more likely to be homeless than, their non-LGBTQ counterparts. That's important to know.
And it's a reality.
It's the reality.
Yeah.
But like the experience of a homeless young person, like a couch surfing young person who doesn't know where they're going to sleep the next night, is the same no matter what. And we should all want to end that for everyone. We should know that like some of the challenges that LGBTQ youth face are different than non-LGBTQ youth. Like, you know, maybe their family has kicked them out because of their identity. So making sure that there are shelter beds available for them that are safe is really, really important. But it's the experience of a young person who is sleeping on the sidewalk or on some unknown couch that matters. And I think the same is true for like medical providers who, you know, have a harder time getting admitted into med school, or, you know, who are less likely to share the background of their patients because we haven't been building a pipeline for like providers of color. I have found, as like a policymaker and also as a person with intersecting identities, that like the more that you can talk about the actual human experience of the people that you are trying to help, the better, both for a messaging standpoint and from a policy making standpoint.
Well, and you mentioned the statistics and some of those statistics backing up the reality of the stuff you're saying. And so do you ever feel like right now in this day and age too, where people are often operating under different sets of information, that you can give those statistics to people, for example, and they still don't quite buy it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I've also had conversations like knocking doors of neighbors, you know, say where Fox News is on.
Yep.
And they invite me in to sit on their recliner and we're chatting, and they're like really worried about like the queer agenda in elementary school. And, you know, I could be like, rattle off statistics at them, right? But what I did instead was like ask more questions, like, like what makes you worry about this? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And they're worried that their grandkid is like not going to learn math and reading. And I'm not here to be like an apologist for bigoted people. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I do think that all of us can get stuck in like the labels and language that we are comfortable with or used to. And if we can like break through that and just talk about like the people and the actual challenge, we can often find places of commonality. Like I've got internet trolls that are like, DEI is DOA. It's their like new catchy phrase.
Okay.
But what they mean is like no more affirmative action. But that's not what diversity, equity, inclusion means, right? But when we talk about like, oh, does this service member who was a code breaker, during World War II, does that person have value for our national security?
Yeah.
Like, oh, yes.
I think you hit on something very true, which is sometimes asking the questions is the thing that can end up opening somebody up and causing them to think differently about it. I've knocked quite a few doors during different elections, and I was knocking on doors in Pennsylvania last year, and this woman opens the door and I start talking to her, and the first thing she asked me was, had I heard all the stuff about Kamala being trans? And I tell you, like, I take a second and be like, what the hell are you talking about? But I kept it in. I looked at her and I was just like, okay, let's talk about this. Where did you read that? And where did you see it? And I think for me, there's so much like trying to parse through these crazy sources of information where people are getting things, and it's all fed to them in this like silo. And so they come to think that this is the true source of all their information. And for her, it was, a friend had reposted something on Facebook and she clicked into it, and then another person sent it to her. So because two people who existed in the same information ecosystem of her sent her something that was outlandish, that it must have been true because it was backed up by someone else. And so it was, I was like, okay, I was like, did you Google it? It was trying to like get to this point where like she could say, oh, I guess if I went maybe a step or two further, I could have found something that would have confirmed that wasn't true. And part of that was just, I didn't start by saying, what the hell are you talking about? It was just like, I need to figure out where you're coming from, or we can't make any progress. And so I think you saying ask questions is important.
Definitely.
Hopefully, as Democrats hope, they will take back the House in 2026, and they will have a they will have a majority again. What can Democrats still govern effectively? And there's this question of, when they get back into power at some point, is it just going to be putting all these things back into place, or can they do big things and think of new things again? So it's this question of like maintain versus change.
Okay, so we have like opportunities for a different kind of governing after 26 and then after 28. And so I think first and foremost, like after 26, like if we have the gavels back in the House, we, I'm on the oversight committee.
Yeah.
We can actually hold hearings to hold the Trump administration accountable. Like we won't have to like introduce motions to subpoena people that will be quashed. We can set the agenda for the hearings and like bring folks before committee that will have to answer our questions meaningfully. Yeah. And I think that is, a first really important milestone for us to hit. When we're in the position to pass real policy and get it signed by hopefully a Democratic president, right? I think we do have the opportunity not just to reinstate things the way that they were, but everything's burning to the ground already, right? Like literally and figuratively, we are seeing the destruction of government as we know it. And like we touched on, like, there are real problems with the healthcare system. Yeah. Like we shouldn't just build everything up and put everything right back the way it was. We can think about like, how do we like cover more people? How do we get people the kind of quality healthcare that they need? How do we ensure that rural healthcare is stable in a way that we weren't able to do before? It's scary, but also exciting.
It's like the glass half full
definitely
view of probably helps you keep your sanity, I'm assuming, which is like, I wish this wasn't, I'm sure you wish you could fix it or improve it from what its previous state was, but that's not the reality. And so it's the optimist outlook of, okay, we're going to be able to rebuild something, and now we have to rebuild it better. Yeah. It is hard, but I think that is sometimes, for, like I said, for people, it's the thing that keeps them going. Yeah.
And I mean, after I was first elected in 2018, I remember, I guess it was my first interim in 2019, like saying at a number of events, like, I wake up every day thinking, do I burn it down or fix it from the inside? Like, do we like tear apart this broken thing or do we try to rebuild it? And we're still grappling with that. Like, how do we rebuild things in a way that serves people better?
Okay. And you've got a busy schedule. You know, you got places to go, things to do. I've got 2 more questions for you. What is something or a way you've approached your career that you think has really worked for you that you feel like others should take to heart?
Yeah. I think for me, being open to the opportunity to lead or serve in a new way has really served me. I mean, like I said, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be an elected official, but when the opportunity like presented itself before me, when, you know, I understood that my home district had 3 Republicans representing it and I could make change, like, I said yes. When this opportunity to run for Congress came available, I said yes. And I think some people have like their sights set on like, I'm going to serve on this committee. I'm going to run for this office next. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. This is my path. I think being open to at every twist and turn where you can be of the most service, where your voice matters the most, where you can be the most impactful. Like, say yes to that opportunity, even if it's not the one that you thought was right for you.
I love it. To cap us off, it's a hard time for people right now. It's a frustrating time. There's just this feeling of like, what do we do and how do I make my impact? What is something recent that has happened to you that you were able to do, or some change you were able to affect that still gave you that feeling of like, I'm doing something meaningful and this work matters?
Yeah. So I go home every weekend. And I go home every weekend because I want to see my other dogs and my wife and my mom and my brother and my nephew, but also because I want to have as many meetings in community. I want to go to as many community events with the people of the 6th District as I can, because my neighbors are my why. And, you know, getting to meet with leaders on the ground, whether that's school district leaders or, you know, city councilors or organizational leaders or just like neighbors who are volunteering, that's really inspiring to me. And I get on the plane on Mondays and think like everything might be terrible in DC this week, but like I know that the people in Washington state are working so hard to keep us from like getting pulled backwards.
It's like your weekly energy boost.
It's so good. You know, I talk to so many people at the grocery store, at the coffee shop. It's like mobile office hours. I'm just like about and folks stop and talk to me, and we schedule a lot of meetings too. And, you know, we've also got a district team that's really dedicated to solving problems for people. We've, you know, returned millions of dollars in just the first 6.5 months of this year to folks from Social Security or IRS or you name it. And that like service and working alongside leaders keeps me motivated.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. And with that note, Congresswoman Emily Randall from Washington 6th District, I so appreciate you coming on Building the Bench today.
Thanks
I
so
thank
much.
Bad Bunny as well for joining us. He's taking a little bit of nap,
He
of a nap
loves
at the
it.
end. I love it. I mean, it's a good space to take a nap. Thank you again for coming. I appreciate
you.
your time. Come back whenever you want. Our door is always open.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.